This episode of Hak5 is brought to you by Domain.com.
Hello, welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Moore.
It's your weekly dose of Technolist, and we are not in the studio, no.
We are not at RSA either.
No, why aren't we at RSA? In fact, because I can see Moscone Center, I can see the Metreon.
Yeah, so it turns out that RSA did something that we really weren't big fans of.
So RSA decided that they were going to take $10 million from the NSA to push weak crypto standards in BSafe, which then later NIST would go on to allow it to become an international standard. That is not cool. And
they basically stuck a backdoor on everybody's things.
And now they didn't stick a backdoor, they just used a very weak crypto standard.
Basically the same thing.
Okay, fine line, but still not cool. Okay, so if the NSA comes to you and offers you $10 million, don't take it. Unless it's to make the world a better place.
Right, and then we would understand if it was for a better place, but in this case, the RSA basically sold themselves out.
Right, and not just themselves, because you can't claim like, oh, we need this kind of stuff for national security, because then it's the same standards that everybody's using, and then it breaks everyone's networks, and then nobody wins, right? I mean, the same kind of like, oh, we're going to backdoor Windows or something so that we can get in and do lawful stuff. Well, great. Well, now every nation can get in and do lawful stuff. Using air quotes here. So anyway, Vegas 2.0, awesome group of people put together this awesome boycott. And and actually, why don't you, we have one of the Vegas 2.0 guys here. Tell us, why are we boycotting with tacos?
Tacos are delicious. That's number one.
This is actually the case, that margaritas go well with tacos?
Margaritas typically with lots and lots of tequila in them. Absolutely. You know. Also, who doesn't want to just like get really mad at the RSA and the NSA over good, healthy taco lunch? I mean, really.
Okay, so what's the inspiration behind the trolling?
The inspiration behind the trolling.
Because some would say that this is just straight up trolling.
Well, it is trolling. Let's be honest here. In case anybody was confused, we are absolutely trolling everybody here. But the troll is basically to say, RSA, you and the NSA, it was a great relationship for as long as you had it. It's time you guys broke up, you know? Let's set that Facebook status to, it's complicated, you know? That's the best thing we can say with this particular troll/yummy taco event.
Awesome.
Whenever people come by, have you been educating them if they try to come in the door about why you're doing this?
Oh, yeah. We got these little slips of paper that say FOAD, you know, which you can look up on the internet what that means. But it essentially says, like, you paid to be at RSA. You're paying RSA money, which means you really don't care about what they do with their ciphers, or you don't care about what they do with the NSA. And we say you should care, especially at lunchtime when you're super hungry.
Yeah, this is the most convenient place to get lunch in town. It's the only reasonably priced place across the street from the conference. And I applaud you for crowdsourcing this and getting everybody behind to make this Vegas 2.0 dream a reality.
Oh, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And actually, I really appreciate all the people that helped out with the crowd tilt on this one. They really came through in a pinch. Like, we were down to the wire, like last day, 12 hours left, and people were like, no, this needs to happen. And we suddenly got a lot of good groundswell of people that said, let's buy out this entire restaurant and make the most convenient, most affordable, and most delicious place near RSA not a thing for anybody that paid money to be at RSA.
Yeah, most delicious sit-in I've ever been at. So, you know, props to you guys as well as, let's see, DC 408 and No Starch and everybody. Well, yeah. I mean, we're just here for the booze. But where can people find out about the other fun stuff that Vegas 2.0 does?
Oh, well, we have a Twitter account you can get to at _Vegas20. We also have a Tumblr, Vegas2-0 on Twitter, on Tumblr. So definitely check those two things out. Also, we're going to be premiering a new website in 2 weeks called VegasHackers.org. And that's going to be premiering all the stuff we do, EFF fundraisers, DEF CON shenanigans, running around with rascals all over the place and causing a whole bunch of hoopla on top of all the protests and things that we're doing here today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us. Cheers.
Bye.
So yeah, that's basically what we're doing. We're sitting in, having margaritas and saying, no, you gave money to RSA, they're bad, and so you don't get to have tacos. No tacos for you.
NSA.
Well, RSA, NSA, I mean, what's the difference at this point?
So we're having a good time here in the city, and we're going to be bringing you a whole bunch of interesting feedback about SDR this episode.
Yes, we have gotten a ton of it, so we should probably just get right into it. I want to thank you all for your amazing feedback on the software-defined radio kick that we've been on as of late. We've received so many emails, and I want to thank you for a lot of the insights as well as a lot of the questions. And I'd like to take the moment before we get further in the practical to lay down a little bit of foundation stuff, a little bit of theory here, because essentially over the last couple of weeks, what we've been doing is playing around with electromagnetic radiation. So this electromagnetic radiation, or EM, is really essentially photon wave particles moving at the speed of light. And these electromagnetic waves consist of both electric fields and magnetic fields, which oscillate at this beautiful fixed relationship. So it looks kind of like this. If we have our magnetic field here, it's all pretty and stuff, then we'll also have an electric field, and this just goes on forever and looks beautiful. Well, these waves are measured by frequency or wavelength, which are, as we define them, as spectrum. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we know of as the spectrum right now. So for instance here, over on the left, we've got these great big waves that slowly get shorter and shorter and shorter. There we go. Good enough for me. And what we really have here, as we look at these waves from left to right, is we've got this great big section that we'll define over here as radio. And then we'll have a section for microwaves. And then a section for, in fact, infrared, or IR. Maybe familiar with that in your television remote, as well as our visible light, ultraviolet light, and then X-rays and gamma rays. And so what's nice about this is actually in the context that we've been speaking about recently, we're really just kind of concerned with what's over here. And here in the United States, this is actually what the FCC is going to, mandate what we can and how much fun we can have with these frequencies. Although that said, we're actually going to, in the near future, see a lot more interesting stuff happening right on the edge here in visible light. Take a look at something called Li-Fi. It's akin to Wi-Fi, but in a very slim spectrum of light that we may or may not be able to perceive. So that's kind of interesting. Well, when I talk about this, I'm talking about all of these different things. We just classify them as these different names, but essentially they are all electromagnetic radiation. And I know from experience, whenever I go to put up some massive Wi-Fi antenna in the apartment or wherever, my girlfriend's constantly like, is this thing radiating me? And I got news for you. The universe is radiating you. And just as such, you are actually radiating the universe. These photon wave particles can be as small as an atom or as large as the known universe. They cannot, in fact, be larger than the universe, else we would need a larger one. But that said, we measure this electromagnetic radiation in these lengths of their wave. And this is actually done really easily. This wave here, for instance, we're going to go ahead and say that right there, from this peak to this peak. And this section right here is what's known as a cycle. And we're going to go ahead and measure these two cycles between, the peak and the other peak. In fact, as its distance between those two peaks. And now we're actually going to measure that in meters. So this right here, for instance, from there to there would be measured in, say, meters, or if it was really big, it would be in kilometers, or if it was really small, it'd be in centimeters. And, the metric system. Isn't it wonderful? They should probably keep teaching it in grade school. That's a little US-centric. Anyway, we can also measure how many cycles there are in any given second. So for instance, right here, if I were to measure this and say, for instance, this right here were 1 second of time. So time moving over here, and we have 1 second. We would say that we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 cycles within this amount of time. And so what those 4 cycles would mean is we could express it by saying that this electromagnetic radiation is oscillating at 4 hertz. Okay, so 1 hertz, so 1 Hz, is 1 oscillation over time. So from here to here is 1 second. Whereas 1 lowercase k Hz, and all of these are SI measurements of units, 1 kilohertz is, as opposed to 1 kilobyte, it's actually not 1024, no, it's actually 1,000 waves per second. Whereas a megahertz, so we've got 1 capital M Hz. So this is 1,000 cycles. This is 1 cycle. This would be 1 million cycles. And then 1 gigahertz would be 1,000, commas there, million cycles per second. And so you can kind of like already equate that because you probably are familiar with those kinds of measurements of frequencies when it comes to your computers. Now, whereas before when we've talked about these types of things, maybe in the going back to some of the first whiteboarding segments where we talked about these waves in terms of pulse code modulation, where we're talking about audio, these waves are not audio waves. And the difference being that unlike this section right here of the visible spectrum, where we can actually perceive this, if we are gifted with the perception of sight, we can actually see the electromagnetic radiation in this area right here. Sound, audio, which we typically perceive in the 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz range of our human ears, so everywhere from 20 oscillations per second to 20,000 oscillations per second. Those oscillations actually depend on the compression of molecules. And that energy actually needs to be converted into pressure, either in the air or say in the water, to be perceived, to be heard. And that's why you can hear cool sounds in the ocean, and you can hear my voice right now because of the oscillations coming out of your speakers. How fantastic is that? So how does this electromagnetic radiation get into my software-defined radio, down my universal serial bus, and into my computer so I can do fun things with it? Well, essentially, this guy right here is a conductor. I mean, it's an antenna, right? But this is actually conducting that radiation, okay? That electromagnetic radiation is traveling through the universe at the speed of light, and what's going to happen is it is going to couple with these conductors, and it is going to travel along them, inducing electric current by moving the electrons through the conductor. So, I mean, bear in mind, different frequencies are going to have different properties as far as like how well they penetrate different surfaces and different materials. For example, you know, some frequencies aren't going to go through the human body as well because we're ugly bags of mostly water and carbon and TNG reference, whereas other, you know, frequencies will be able to go through the earth and space and time and dimensions. I made up the last two, but as you can see, you know, essentially what we're doing with these different antennas is we're just putting out something there, you know, some material that will be attenuated by this radiation that's going through the air. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the, in practical terms, the radio frequencies, the spectrum that we're interested in here. And so just as all of this electromagnetic radiation is divided up into what we call radio, microwaves, infrared, visible, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays, we actually divide up radio. And when I say we, I'm actually talking about our friends at the FCC and the ITU. And you guys know how I feel about both. And we can get into lots of fun discussions about the International Telecommunications Union. But that said, we split up radio into different kind of sections because of their different usefulnesses. So for instance, all the way over here on the low end, what we have is extremely low frequency. And this kind of stuff, we're talking about kilometers distance and wavelength, and that's the kind of stuff that you're really only going to see used by like these guys, and then they've got like a little periscope or something, and then they've got a really long antenna trailing off behind them and stuff. And so submarines can use ELF and SLF very well because those frequencies, while they can't transmit a very high amount of data, can actually go very far through the sea and sometimes through the earth. ULF is another example of that. That was used in World War I for what's called Earth mode communications, because it like can just penetrate through rock, which is pretty fantastic. VLF is another frequency set that's a lot of times used for scientific stuff and submarines. So this is really kind of outside the realm of most of the stuff that we're going to be getting into. However, it is really cool in the sense that it can hang out with these guys, and that's always fun. We also have LF, or low frequency. So if you were into LF frequencies in the radio arena, you'd be a loafer. Likewise, MF for medium frequency, so you'd be an MFer. We've got HF for high frequencies. And so then we finally get into the kind of fun stuff, because thus far we've only been talking about, I mean, this stuff really we've been talking about like atomic clocks and aircraft and maritime stuff. But then we get into the fun stuff like VHF and UHF and SHF. So that's for very high frequency, ultra high frequency, and super high frequency. And those are the kinds of frequencies where we're actually going to see things like FM broadcast terrestrial radio. We're going to see NOAA, weather station stuff. We're going to see broadcast television. We're going to see cellular. In fact, when we get into SHF over here, this is probably what you're the most familiar with already, is because this is what's sometimes referred to as the centimeter band, because again, we're talking about the lengths between these different waves, and as we get further along, the length decreases. And so in that band, which is measured in centimeters as opposed to these guys, which are measured in kilometers, we're actually going to see things in terms of Wi-Fi, things that we're used to as far as, radar and microwaves and cell phones. And in fact, we're even going to see in the higher bands in, say, for example, EHF, the neighbor of SHF, for extremely high frequency. This is going to come into terms real soon with AD. Not talking about time, I'm actually talking about our friends over at IEEE. So the spec for 802.11 AD is actually going to operate within the 60 gigahertz band, and that's pretty cool stuff, because the higher that we go down here, so as we travel down here, the frequencies get smaller in terms of, like, we're measuring centimeters, whereas we're measuring kilometers, but at the same time, our data rate is going to get much higher, which is kind of awesome. And then we can, in fact, even in this band here, we'll see things like, for instance, in addition to weapons systems and things like that, we'll actually see fun things that you've probably already experienced, like millimeter wave scanners. So thank you, TSA, for taking a look at all our naughty bits. And then finally, we get into THF, which is your terahertz band for your mad scientists, and I believe it stands for totally high frequency. What is it? It's tremendously high frequency, I believe, something like that. And this is just like bizarre mad science stuff, and that's going to be awesome to get into. And I think it's really important that we're getting into all of this stuff. As you guys know, I'm a huge proponent of the fun things that we can do with Wi-Fi. I'm also a huge proponent of free and open access to internet-like networks. Say, for instance, censorship-resistant networks. And it's really important as hackers that we kind of embrace all of this technology, because I feel like, if anything, it is going to be one of the backbone underlying technologies that is going to enable whatever that next free and open network may be. Not your stuff with the leased line from AT&T or the NSA. And so this is really important to kind of grok here, and I hope that I've illustrated it in some sort of understandable manner. But essentially, all of it comes down to, it's all energy, man. It's all radiation. It's all, you know, magnetics and electronics, and it's flowing through all of us. It's binding the universe like duct tape. It's got a light and dark side, and we're going to be doing some really fun stuff with it. So continue hitting us up, feedback@hak5.org. Let us know your questions. We're going to continue getting into a nice little marriage of theory and practical as we take a look more in depth into different modulation techniques and things of that nature. So go ahead, share us your thoughts there or in the comments. And remember, we've got an entire SDR forum over at forums.hak5.org. Until next week, I'll bid you adieu. It doesn't matter if you're an electric field or a magnetic field. When that killer idea hits, you're gonna need to snag yourself a domain name and web hosting quickly, like Lightspeed Quickly and Domain.com's quick domain discovery system, and their easy checkout process is gonna have your website up and like, boom, it's there, and you're like, wow, there's my website. I'm serious, I've done it like numerous times, and it is amazing. I love the guys over at Domain.com. I've told you before, they're affordable, they're reliable, they're easy to use, and they're fun to tweet at, so go ahead and tweet them at Domain.com. Thank them for loving Hak5 and loving you guys with an extra 15% off. That's right, head over to Domain.com, and when you check out, use the code HAK5, and they're gonna hook you up with an extra 15% off. So when you think domain names, think Domain.com.
It is now time for the Technolist photo of the week. This photo is from HJ in Denmark. He says, "Hi guys, a few years back I was the sysadmin at the local student radio. Then at some point the motherboard died and I needed to get data off the RAID configure hard drives. So the setup is shown in the photo. It's 4 disks in a software RAID configuration in the bottom cabinet connected to the motherboard of the standing cabinet." Thank you so much, HJ, for sending in that picture. Very cool, love your setup. And of course, you can share your pictures with us at feedback@hak5.org. We love checking them out, so be sure to send them with the subject line Technolist.
No,
what are you doing?
I just checked it out. They all say United States Department of Justice.
Oh.
I was wondering how you get like front row parking in front of RSA. I guess we should probably clarify that we love you guys with the shiny shoes. Just don't be evil.
Yeah, we do.
Don't stop being evil if you've been evil, and don't be evil if you haven't yet.
So we are outside RSA here in San Francisco, but obviously we didn't get in. We don't have any badges. We spent the entire day at Chevy's.
Yes, so thank you, Vegas 2.0 for all of the margaritas. Yeah. And I guess we should also say that, you know, while this is trolling, there are lots of responsible and more mature ways to go about the problem at hand.
About boycotting the RSA and about, yeah, the NSA/RSA issue.
Right, and I think a lot of them, in fact, we heard Bruce Schneider talking at ShmooCon about this, and basically this is going to be fixed from both the bottom and the top. You know, at the top, like, it's going to take forever and a day for some, you know, wet noodle legislation to go past. So that'll happen. So if that's your boat, get behind that and try to make it as little of a wet noodle as possible. And then it'll happen, you know, from the bottom up with, you know, the hackers that be, where we actually say, you know what, let's start just focusing on, you know, sound crypto and some actually privacy-aware and trusted applications and things of that nature. So we'll continue covering that.
Do you think that we're going to get some really cool new crypto because of this flaw?
Well, I mean, you know, I think everybody's just aware, like, is going to just become more skeptical.
Right.
I've lost faith in NIST because of this. So, I mean, I know that there's a lot of good people in that organization. However, now they have a problem of their public image. And so RSA and the NSA have done a huge disservice, not only to the tech community, but the world at large, because that's actually hurting, I don't know, confidence in American companies, and you know, it's a very large discussion. So to answer your question, though, in the end, I feel like consumers, though, are going to win because we will get better applications. I mean, if you look at all the latest, like, look at Whisper Systems, look at the latest stuff coming out of you know, Moxie's company with TechSecure. It's like group messaging where the crypto stuff just happens in the background. You don't even have to think about it. So what we're going to end up with is easier crypto, and actually cross that barrier where, you know, before, like as we've shown, like PGP is hard, let's go shopping. We're going to get applications where it's just secure by default.
And of course, as usual, if you want to follow everything that we are doing here at Hak5 and you want to give your own opinion about what's happening with the NSA and RSA convention, feel free to email us over at feedback@hak5.org.
Or just leave a comment and we will see you on the forums. Hak5.org is the place to find that, as well as links to where to follow us and our store. If you want to support us directly, it'll take you over to hakshop.com. We really appreciate you guys allowing us to come out with cool stuff like this, which is not housing a... Oh, I guess it is. Never mind. I don't know anything about that probe. Anyway, that said...
That about wraps it up for this episode of Hak5. And of course, thank you so much for your feedback as usual. We really enjoyed listening to everything that you have to say about SDR. I'm Shannon Morse.
I'm Darren Kitchen.
Trust your Technolust.
What we're doing is we're having a lot of fun with electromagnetic.
Should we put a note on one of these that says sorry about what happened to your car?